All right, so we're almost done. I've got the logo all drawn. I showed you how to do perfect symmetry. So even though my logo is more dynamic in the way it's trying to move the eye, how can I use perfect symmetry? Well, one thing, if I squint, and this is what I call the squint test, and I do it a ton with my work, I notice that there's a lot more white in my image than black, right? And it's better to have a kind of a clearer balance of that for a logo, because we want it to work without color before we start adding color. So I might use this symmetrical piece, and I'm on the large selection tool. I might use it as a framing device. You know, I might, because it's symmetrical, I can push and pull it different ways. And because it's not a stroke, it's an outline path, I can kind of use it to frame my image. And then I can think, well, what if parts of this image were filled in with solid black? You know, would that be more interesting? Or what if it's a banner on top, you know, that was filled in with black, or something underneath? But as I try things out, I'm not loving any of them particularly. I might try something like this, where I take this and I put it on top of my circles. And then I'm just going to widen it a little bit, hold down Option and Shift so it widens from both sides equally. Squeeze it down a little. I keep hitting return like it's a transform command, but you don't need to do that in Illustrator. And then I think, okay, well, yeah, maybe something like that could work just on the top. And I could fill that in solid black. So what would that look like? Let me show you. I am going to, instead of modifying what I created, I'm going to make a copy of it, lock it, turn it off, open a new layer, and edit, paste in place. And now I'll modify this one. First thing I'm going to do is close it up using the pencil tool. All right, and then I'm going to merge it all together using the Pathfinder tool. Because I like to keep things as simple as possible. And if there's any little remaining overlaps, I just use the blob brush to paint those anchors out. The blob brush will unify them all into the one cutout, right? And so this introduces us to the idea of coloring your vector. And the first color you can use is solid black. And now I want to change the shape of the bottom. And now I want it to follow the top of that curve. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use my transparency tool just temporarily while it's selected. Take this transparency down so I can see through it, and so I can redraw using the pencil tool along this curve. I just needed to overlap my black. That's why I always start with a black and white logo. Whoops. Did it from the wrong side. So redrawing that bottom edge. Now I always have to go through an anchor, right? And then I can finish it up. So you have to do it in piecework sometimes. Okay, so now if I want that to float behind everything, it's kind of cute, and I want it to be filled in, I can take its opacity back to 100%, but I'm going to make a duplicate of it in my layers. Copy, lock, turn off, edit, paste in place. So there it is. And I'm going to move that layer behind my other layers And especially here, this plant layer, I'm going to make a copy of it. Command C, lock it, new layer, edit, paste in place. Turn off the existing one. And now these are the only two layers unlocked. Select them both so that they're overlapping. And now we're going to do a different type of Pathfinder. We're going to exclude. We're going to cut one out from the other. See how that works. That's one way you can use what's called blocking in your logo. But I don't really like that too much. Let's try isolating. Oh, I have to select them both. Come on, where are you? So sometimes you can get a result that you like through Pathfinder, through blocking or erasing out, right? So this cuts out that plant shape from my background. And then I can add the plant shape back in because I have it on a different layer, right? But ultimately, and this is where it comes to be like coloring, ultimately what I want to do is take my plant and cut out the inside shape. So how do I do that? Well, let's make this transparent again. So I can see it. Take it to about 50%. And you have to think about it like cutouts of paper, right? So I need to make this shape, erase it out where the plant is. Right? So I'm going to use a pretty large eraser. It can be pressure sensitive. That's too big. And the reason I have to use the eraser first is I have to get enough individual paths to be able to modify them with the pencil tool to clean them up further. The eraser is not, it's a brute tool in Illustrator. It's not a fine-tuned tool. But as soon as those are separate, now I have 4 different paths instead of just one. I'll cut a little opening there. I'll cut a little opening here that then I can use the pencil tool to widen up. I just need to overlap my line work. So if you find that you don't have enough contrast in your design, maybe a blocking in of black shapes can help. But each little change, it requires your attention. It doesn't matter how big or small the path is, they can cause you a lot of stress if you're not clicking on exactly the right things. Okay, there we go. Now remember, we want our logo, our black version of the logo, to just be solid black. I don't want you to leave gray in it, even though that can look cool. Grayscale can be part of your color version. And that's for maximum versatility. Okay, almost there. All right, now I'm going to turn that transparency for that whole layer because now I have separate paths in that layer. Turn that transparency back to 100%. And I see how that blocking works. And then I can use the one I cut out from before. Did I not leave it? Let's see. Where I cut out the stems, and I could play with using that. Or I can just delete by hand. I think I'll do that. Take the transparency down again. Da-da-da. And we're almost done. And then just use my eraser and cut around the stems. So I'm giving like a little bit of an outline around these edges. And when you want something to show up on a dark background, this is what's called an offset, because you're just kind of extending the outline of it a little bit. This is all fine-tuned stuff. And then you can modify that with your pencil tool. Okay, so now everything is showing probably the way I want. I just need to clean it up. And I need to erase from my circle layer in there. So forgetting that. So I'm going to unlock that layer, lock the others, use the eraser. Just do that. So once you get your bearings, it's not all that difficult. But it just takes the work of putting it in. So now I'm going to adjust this using the pencil tool and command to get nice, smooth offsets. That still feels somewhat hand-drawn, where these shapes overlap. Sometimes getting the pencil tool to register with enough anchors is the challenge, unfortunately. And then you might see things like there's a little bobble there I might fix in the leaf layer. But again, you don't need to be too perfect with it until it's the final version for the client. And then the smooth tool might help with this one. Good enough. All right, so then any last minute things you want to fix, you just unlock that layer. I like to use the pencil tool for little bobbles. And there we go. So we've got a black and white logo now. So what do I do? How do I save it? I hit Command S, save it as an AI file for me. It's Carl Assignment 6 Survivalist Logo. It says Sketch Test, so I can change that name because this is my black logo. It's not even black and white. It's just cut out of black paper. That's the most versatile. And again, that can be embossed on a book or something. I'm going to save it to the desktop as an AI file. That's my working file. Now, in order to do more with it, I want to say file save as an EPS file. And that's how we'll be able to bring it into Photoshop to print it or to modify it further. EPS file when you're all done. That's our archive file type for vectors. And now I'm able to start coloring it.